We start tonight's program by introducing you to a Lagrange couple that ranches like thousands of other Wyomingites, but with a bigger challenge than most. Rancher John Borelli is totally blind. Wyoming Signatures producer Steve Costin takes us to the eastern Wyoming home of John and Linda Borelli to show us how they do it.
Well, in talking about my lifestyle a little bit and of the ranching and farming and agriculture that we are part of up here, I have found, number one, that the way of life is just a wonderful way of life with family values, and I can go out and just enjoy the smell of fresh air and the birds and listening to the new day come, or just going out to the barn and the smells and everything that's happening, you know, in the barn. I just really enjoy that. And the nice thing about ranch living or country living is that if we are in dire straits from a storm or something big that we can't handle, a neighbor will gladly come over and lend a hand with manpower or equipment. And you don't often find that in the big city life anymore. Some of those values have kind of gone by the wayside, and our lifestyle is still a much slower lifestyle in this part of the world. My biggest challenge for me to overcome anything is getting from point A to point B. And sometimes, you know, point B can be at the far end of the ranch where a fence is down or whatever, and I have to make accommodations to get transportation to that point in time. Fixing the problem is very easy. We have the proper equipment and tools to take care of the problem, but they're not of such that you want to carry it 2 or 3 miles on your back to get there to fix it. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And so you know, I always have to have a plan B.
When I'm at the ranch, Johnny is usually involved with one of our helpers here at the ranch, and basically the helpers are his eyes. Johnny does all the decision making and all of the direction with his helper, and I just do my own things around the ranch. He's totally independent. People are amazed because I do work the graveyard shift, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And the question that I get most often is, well, who takes care of Johnny when you're at work? And the answer is very simple. Johnny takes care of Johnny. The only thing that he is limited in is getting in a vehicle and driving someplace. Johnny has had so many years of dealing with his blindness that when we did decide to go into the cattle business, as opposed to our original plans of raising horses, Johnny designed our cattle handling facilities with utmost precision so that there really isn't an opportunity for injury there. The local ranchers like using our cattle handling facilities because they are so absolutely safe. And again, the diabetic situation caused us the greatest amount of hesitation because of our location, the closest hospital being 40 miles away was a little concerning for us, but we searched our hearts and souls and knew that this was what Johnny had dreamed of, was being a Wyoming cowboy, and this opportunity was just too good to pass up.
The Apple people, I think, have really enabled the older population, the non-computer population, to do some skills, some adaptive skills on that. And I'll give you an example. For me, as far as orientation, I feel pretty comfortable walking anywhere on the ranch now. For example, we have a stock tank out in the middle of 200 and some acres, and that tank was not accessible to me before. Well, now my compass talks on my iPhone. It talks and tells me which way I'm going, and I just know the heading to that stock tank, and I just follow that heading and it'll get me there, and I can start getting that tank filled, waiting for my person to come up in the afternoon or whatever it is. And I feel a lot more comfortable being out alone on the ranch with my iPhone now, just because of its capabilities. In each one of my buildings, I have a radio. And the radio in one of the buildings is usually set on a music station. In the barn, it's set on talk radio. And in my shop, it's set on another kind of station. I can find each one of those buildings on a normal day with my cane. I can find those buildings. There are some exceptions to every rule in this world, and these are a couple of the exceptions. On a very windy day, sound is my #1 enemy. I have some wind chimes up as well, and in any kind of point of reference that I can use on a day like that makes it safer for me to get around the yard. And also, if I'm carrying something from the house to go to the barn or go to the shop, and I can't use my cane, which that happens a lot, I can just use the sound of the radio to get me to that point, or at least close to it. I kind of have my shop is really kind of set up like my uncle's shop was. I have my tools in one spot. I have my welding, fabricating equipment in a spot. I have several work tables in different areas, hoists and lifts and stuff to do the heavier maintenance. And it's all kind of set up the way my uncle's shop was set up, because I found that to be very efficient, and it seems natural for me. He did it for over 60 years, so he must have known something about setting up shops, and I've just learned that from him, and that's how I set my shop up. Welding on a ranch is pretty important. And then I've also got into a little bit of ornamental metal art that I like to do and make for friends and stuff. I make all my own cattle guards on the ranch. We have put up some pipe and cable fence on the ranch. Different things like that. I just love doing all that kind of work. Around the ranch, I do all the maintenance on all the equipment, as far as changing oil, greasing, and I even have rebuilt that engine on that small tractor. Our neighbor borrowed the tractor one day, and he wasn't in school that day. They taught him about temperature gauges, and he boiled over and blew the engine. So I rebuilt it myself, and that was fun. I got it apart just fine and everything, but when I put it back together, I did need Linda to read the manual so that we could get the right torque settings on the right bolts, and make sure all that was correct. And so far it's still running.
Living with John is always an adventure. Each day holds something new, and he has never ceased to amaze me with his ability to manage things here at the ranch.
We are going to try to do this as long as our health and our age will let us do it. And we both know and we both accept that someday either Linda's going to say or I'm going to say, honey, I can't do this anymore because it's too much for me, or it's affecting my health situation, or I can't change implements on the tractor anymore, or it's just become too much, and we both know that.
But we both, again, love what we're doing, and so we have a great trust that when these situations do arise, and there's nothing you can do to prevent them, we just deal with each one as it comes along.